Thunderbolts Kill the Avengers is a really bad game, which almost worked. All the designs in the game are absolutely peak. I really like the dynamic between the team. There's some really good scenes, like when they find recordings of Tony talking about his contingencies for the Avengers. And I'll admit, there are really funny scenes.
Oh, you shouldn't have done that, Shark. That's Superman. He'll kick your ass.
But then there are some really, really awful scenes that I despise, and I know it's the title of the game, and it was a massive unfortunate coincidence that this game released very closely to the death of the GOAT himself, Kevin Conroy. Iron Man's death scene is just so disrespectful. Doubly so because for whatever reason they made this game in continuity with Ravencroft, and it kind of sort of follows after the events of Raven Knight, where Tony blows up his mansion and takes over Scarecrow's fear toxin, and they incorporate it in the only really good boss fight in the game. The team's brought together by Nikki Fury, and she does a decent job. She's not playable, and it's kind of funny that I do recognize her face from the newer Dune games. It's kind of weird that you can say that about a video game, right? Bucky Barnes is in the game. He is non-playable and basically forgotten about. Toad and Hiro Hamada are in the game. They are not playable. Obadiah Slade from the Ravencroft games makes a cameo. He is not playable. The actual Thunderbolts include Boomerang, who is hilarious and honestly the best character in the game. Abomination, who is really fun and somehow not the dumbest member on the Thunderbolts. Tara Strong, like always, returns to play Gwenpool, and she's also good in the game. And despite the fact that this game was announced in 2020 and released in 2024, her design is clearly inspired by the 2016 Thunderbolts movie. Another design that shows that this game probably should have came out in 2018 is Bullseye, who might be my favorite design in the team. They race swapped him and came up with this backstory that the Bullseye in the Ravencroft games was actually an imposter, and this is the real one. So, he can look more like Will Smith did in the 2016 Thunderbolts movie.
Isn't Deadshot supposed to be white?
Aren't you supposed to be shutting your damn mouth, kangaroo-looking ass?
Because you are Australian.
It doesn't really make sense. I mean, if they're just going to do that, why don't they just introduce a new character who becomes the new Bullseye? And speaking of, they resurrect Harrower from the Ravencroft games. And they turn her into a little kid, which almost cute and funny until you realize her past designs are very lewd and this is very weird. And they also, Gwen first sees her and says, "That's my girl," before realizing she's been de-aged. Even though they've never had the animated series kind of relationship in the Ravencroft games. And I guess Tony got over the whole, this is the end of Iron Man and he has to go into hiding now at the end of Raven Knight because now he's a public figure with a museum and he helped make the Avengers. Iron Lad is missing and presumed dead. And there is no word on where Harley Keener is, despite, being the Raven Knight and the main antagonist of the last game. So I'm guessing we're also just not going to mention Armored Knights. And this is also an introduction of the Avengers into this universe. His design is also peak, but also completely wasted, much like Nova, whose fight was bullshit. And it was kind of cool seeing Abomination put his helmet on, his fingers, and become a Nova, but just for that one cutscene, wasted opportunity. Much like with Spider-Man, who gets literally pissed on in this game. And yeah, these are your 4 bosses, your 4 Avengers you gotta kill. Only 4 of them, you don't get anyone else. Except Black Widow, who somehow managed to escape and helps you, but then gets unceremoniously killed off. Because the rest of them are getting mind controlled by Ultron, who honestly does have probably one of my favorite designs of Ultron, if it wasn't for these weird colors. He's stomping through the multiverse and collecting the Avengers, just like how we can have Heinrich Zemo, but then he gets killed by Spider-Man, and then we have another one from another universe. And to stop the Avengers, the gameplay includes you jumping around and shooting like this is Fortnite. Despite the fact 2 members are known for throwing things, and us having a Abomination on our team, and it being in continuity with and designed by the same people who invented the Ravencroft fighting system, which is one of the best melee fighting games ever. But no, everyone gets a gun and jumps around and shoots, even Abomination. At least they travel differently. And because a modern game is never complete, they have different seasons you can waste money on getting cosmetic crap and a new character. Our Season 1 characters, Justin Hammer, and what is this design? You know, no shame to the actor, they do a good enough job with the material, and there's no way anyone can live up to replacing Mark Hamill as Justin Hammer. But this is so wrong, right? He looks and sounds like Justin Hammer in Iron Wheels. Oh, and you don't get a new boss fight either, you just have to fight the same Avengers now with an Ultron color scheme. I mean, if they're gonna be just lazy about it, they could have at least reskin a boss fight and gave us, like, War Machine. Season 2's character is Blizzard, and they didn't resurrect Donnie Gill from the Ravencroft games. Multiverse, so it's Donna Gill. And I very rarely care if a character is race swapped or gender swapped as long as they still act like the character. And for the most part, I guess they do, but it also feels, I hate saying this, but it feels like just making Blizzard a lesbian is kind of pandering. I love inclusivity, but I'm saying this because there's already a Lady Ice character that's associated with Marvel and the Thunderbolts they could have used. It feels just like, why not? And because multiverse, why gender swap Donald and just make them into Gregora, his wife that needed the cure, and like swap so now she's the one who become Blizzard. And like when they go to the museum and see the outcut of Blizzard, she can be like, oh my goodness, he would have done the same thing about me. I love you, dear, of all the warmth I can try and muster in this cold heart. And then the boss could have just been Spider-Woman. Season 3's character is Bullseye's daughter, and it's like, why? You have all these other Thunderbolt characters. You don't need to make an OC. Or, you know, this is connected to the Ravencroft games. Why not bring in more characters from that? Like Whiplash, or Waxman, or even White Rabbit. And have the boss fight be like Captain Marvel. Season 4's character is Deadpool, and it's like, wow, a character people actually want to play as and see. And is one of the most popular villains from the Ravencroft origin game. Why wasn't he Season 1's character? And why was there no, like, Hulk boss fight? You know, tie it back to Ravencroft. Like the first game where Justin Hammer was going around with the irradiated super soldier serum and turning people into Hulks. And then after all of that, it feels like the game literally just gives up because retcon, they were all just clones and the Avengers saved themselves, all told in slideshows. They break free from Nicky Fury and go off into the multiverse, who cares? I guess if I was able to make the game instead, I would either have it just be player versus player. One team is like the squad and the other team is the Avengers. Or just have a fucking Avengers game. You know, actually use these peak designs and they can like do stuff different from each other. And they gotta stop Baron Zemo, who formed the Lethal Legion. And then throughout the game, you start noticing that Iron Man acts a little bit different, and you also start noticing his design kind of looks familiar in a way, which pays off because you find something that projects a projection of Tony, revealing that Iron Man is actually Harley Keener from the last game. And in that 5-year time skip, Tony created the Ultron project to try and save the world, but then Zemo discovered it and hacked it, and he's using it for evil stuff. And this is the second biggest mistake Tony ever made, and the first being not trying harder to find Harley after he was kidnapped and tortured by Justin Hammer for all those years, and Tony would be honored if he would become the next Iron Man. And then you realize that Harley has been using his Raven Knight armor upgraded to look like Iron Man, and the recording tries telling him how to stop Ultron, and then it's revealed that he was killed by his own creation. And then each season introduces a new Lethal Legion and a new Avenger to help out. But whatever, I guess. Let me know your opinions down below, as well as hitting that like button and subscribing for more Earth 2 nonsense.